Imagine a king who impaled 20,000 people and dined among their corpses. A ruler who tortured his own citizens for entertainment. An emperor who burned scholars alive and buried them in mass graves. These aren't villains from horror movies. These are real kings who ruled over millions, and their cruelty knew no bounds. Today, we're diving into the darkest corners of history to uncover the most brutal kings who ever lived. Trust me, by the end of this video, you realize that some of the monsters we read about in history books make modern dictators look tame. This is going to be disturbing. Let's get into it. Throughout history, power has corrupted even the most promising leaders. But some kings didn't just abuse their power, they weaponized it to create living nightmares for their subjects. From Europe to Asia, from Africa to the Middle East, these rulers left behind legacies written in blood. Their names still send chills down the spines of historians. Today we're exploring 4 kings whose brutality defined their reigns. And fair warning, these stories are not for the faint of heart. Let's start in 15th century Romania, where a prince named Vlad III ruled the region of Wallachia. You might know him by another name, Vlad the Impaler. Yes, that Vlad, the one who inspired Dracula. But here's the thing, the real Vlad was far more terrifying than any vampire. The method. Vlad didn't just kill his enemies, he perfected a form of execution so horrifying that it became his signature, impalement. And we're not talking about a quick death. Vlad's method was designed to maximize suffering. Victims were impaled on wooden stakes that were carefully rounded at the tip, not to be merciful, but to avoid piercing vital organs too quickly. The stake would be inserted through the body and the victim would be hoisted upright, slowly sliding down the pole over hours, sometimes days, before finally dying. In 1462, when the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II invaded Wallachia with an army of 90,000 men, he encountered something that would haunt him forever. A forest of 20,000 impaled corpses lining the road to the capital. Ottoman soldiers, civilians, even children, all rotting on stakes. The sight was so horrifying that the Sultan, a hardened warrior who had conquered Constantinople, turned his army around and retreated. He reportedly said he couldn't conquer a land ruled by such a devil. But Vlad's cruelty didn't stop there. Historical accounts describe how he would host banquets surrounded by impaled victims, eating his meals while listening to their screams. And one famous incident, when a nobleman complained about the smell of rotting bodies, he had him impaled on an extra tall stake so he could be above the stench. Estimates suggest Vlad killed between 40,000 to 100,000 people during his reign. That's roughly 20% of the population he ruled. His own people called him Vlad the Tepish, Vlad the Impaler, a name that still echoes through history. Now, let's jump forward to the late 1800s, to a king who wore a civilized mask while orchestrating one of history's greatest atrocities, King Leopold II of Belgium. In 1885, Leopold convinced European powers to grant him personal control over the Congo Free State, a region 76 times larger than Belgium itself. He promised to bring civilization and end the Arab slave trade. Instead, he created a slave state that would kill an estimated 10 to 15 million Congolese people. Leopold wanted one thing: rubber. The Industrial Revolution created massive demand for it, and the Congo had it in abundance. So Leopold created a system of forced labor that was essentially slavery with a different name. His private army, the Force Publique, was given quotas. Villages had to produce specific amounts of rubber or face punishment. And the punishments were designed to be unforgettable. Here's where it gets truly dark. To prove they weren't wasting bullets, soldiers had to present a severed right hand for every bullet used. This led to a horrifying practice. Soldiers would cut off the hands of living people, men, women, and children, to meet their quotas. Baskets of smoked human hands became currency in Leopold's Congo. Photographs from this era show Congolese children with missing hands, staring blankly at cameras. These images are some of the most haunting documents in history. Villages that didn't meet quotas were burned. Families were held hostage until rubber was delivered. Women and children were kept in chains as collateral. Starvation was used as a weapon. The most chilling part, Leopold never set foot in the Congo. He orchestrated this entire genocide from his palace in Brussels while presenting himself as a humanitarian to the world. When reports of atrocities finally reached Europe, Leopold launched a propaganda campaign denying everything. It took years of activism before the international community forced him to hand over the Congo to the Belgian government in 1908. But by then, half of the Congo's population was dead. Leopold's legacy is genocide dressed in the clothes of civilization. Let's travel to ancient China around 221 BCE, where a king named Yingzheng conquered 6 warring states and declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He unified China, he built the Great Wall, he created the Terracotta Army, but he also became one of history's most paranoid and brutal tyrants. Qin Shi Huang despised criticism. When Confucian scholars criticized his policies, he didn't just silence them, he tried to erase history itself. In 213 BCE, he ordered the burning of all books except those on medicine, agriculture, and divination. Thousands of years of Chinese literature, philosophy, and history went up in flames. It was one of history's greatest acts of cultural destruction. But books weren't enough. The following year, when 460 scholars continued to criticize him, Qin Shi Huang had them buried alive in a mass grave. Others were executed and their bodies left to rot as warnings. This event, known as burning books and burying scholars, became a symbol of tyranny in Chinese history. The Great Wall, one of the wonders of the world, was built by forced labor. Estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of workers died during its construction. Bodies were literally buried within the wall. His tomb, guarded by the famous Terracotta Army, was built by 700,000 forced laborers. According to historical records, when the tomb was completed, all the workers were sealed inside alive to protect its secrets. Qin Shi Huang's paranoia extended even to his own death. He became obsessed with immortality, consuming mercury pills that probably hastened his death at age 49. When he died, his officials hid his death for months, even placing rotting fish in his carriage to mask the smell of his decomposing body. Our final king ruled 16th century Russia, and his nickname tells you everything you need to know: Ivan the Terrible. Ivan IV was Russia's first Tsar, and while he started with promise, his reign descended into madness, paranoia, and unimaginable cruelty. In 1565, convinced that nobility was plotting against him, he created a secret police force called the Oprichnina. These weren't just guards. They were a death squad, dressed in black, riding black horses, carrying symbols of a broom and dog's head to represent sweeping away treason. They terrorized Russia for 7 years, confiscating land, killing nobles, and creating a state of fear across the country. Ivan's worst atrocity came in 1570. Believing that the city of Novgorod was planning to defect, he marched there with his Oprichnina. What followed was 5 weeks of systematic slaughter.
estimates range from 2,000 to 60,000 deaths. Men, women, and children were tortured and killed. People were tied to sledges and dragged through the streets. Others were thrown into the freezing Volkhov River through holes in the ice. Ivan personally participated in the torture. Historical accounts describe him using a staff with a metal point to beat victims. He allegedly roasted people alive and forced others to watch. Ivan's cruelty even extended to his own family. In 1581, in a fit of rage, he struck his pregnant daughter-in-law for wearing immodest clothing, causing her to miscarry. When his son, also named Ivan, confronted him, the Tsar beat him with his pointed staff. The blow struck his son's temple. Ivan held his dying son in his arms, realizing what he'd done. His heir died days later. The famous painting, Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan, captures this moment of horror. Ivan the Terrible died in 1584, leaving Russia traumatized and destabilized. His reign directly contributed to the Time of Troubles, a period of chaos that nearly destroyed the Russian state. These four kings ruled in different eras, on different continents, with different justifications, but they all share something in common. They show us what happens when power meets cruelty without restraint. Vlad impaled 20,000 to make a point. Leopold killed 10 million for profit. Qin Shi Huang buried scholars alive to silence criticism. Ivan massacred entire cities out of paranoia. Their legacies are written in blood, and history has not forgotten them. The scary part? These aren't even the only brutal rulers in history. There are dozens more, from Caligula to Genghis Khan, from Idi Amin to Pol Pot. The list is long and dark. But understanding these rulers isn't just about shock value. It's about recognizing the warning signs of tyranny. It's about understanding how power corrupts, how fear controls, and how cruelty can become normalized. Because the thing about history is it doesn't stay in the past. It echoes forward, teaching us lessons we'd better not forget. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest and most neglected stories. Next, we're covering the Aba Women's Riot, a story of courage that changed Nigeria forever. Drop a comment below. Which historical figure do you want me to cover next? Until then, stay curious, stay educated, and remember, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.